Hi, my name is Larissa Shaps, and I am a friend of Crystal's, and she asked me to do a video on my infertility journey to share with her network with expecting and empowered women. So I am here to share my infertility story, and the exciting news is that I am actually 38 weeks pregnant right now and expecting the baby boy on September 3rd. My infertility journey started in 2015, really. We had been trying a little bit in 2014, but not like putting a ton of energy and focus and effort into really becoming pregnant. And when we hit 2015, I started to get a little concerned that nothing had happened. So I put a little bit more energy and focus in tracking my cycle, tracking my ovulation, and really trying to get pregnant. After several months of failed attempts and tons of negative pregnancy tests, I started to get a little bit more concerned. So I told my OB. My OB did some testing and was diagnosed with like PCOS, which later to come find out is kind of like a broad diagnosis that a lot of women get diagnosed with. My infertility specialist later, and then the following year, actually told me that I did not have PCOS based on some other criteria that I was not meeting. But anyways, we went ahead and we started a couple cycles with Clomid. One of my big things is that I was not getting a menstruation cycle. So it was really difficult for me to track ovulation or to track anything at all. I basically would buy ovulation kits and just use them to see if I was ovulating. And come to find out, I was probably getting a lot of false positives without even realizing it. So my doctor decided to start me on birth control for a month, which would trigger a menstrual cycle, and then encourage me to attempt to try to get pregnant that following month. That didn't work. We did a couple months of that, and then we did a couple months of Clomid. After a couple of failed attempts with Clomid, my doctor sent me to an infertility specialist in about November, December of 2015, and we first met with our infertility specialist in January of 2016. We did further testing. Obviously, my husband was tested. Fallopian tubes were screened. Uterus was screened. Everything was tested, and there was really no actual diagnosis. Through those last 6 months, several things kind of came about. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and I was also diagnosed with psoriasis. So 2 autoimmune disorders that I had no clue I had and had no symptoms until later that fall of 2015. For Hashimoto's, it is hereditary, and I do have a family history of it, but I was not having any symptoms. With my psoriasis, I literally woke up one morning and I had psoriasis, and it was the weirdest thing. And a lot of my physicians, dermatologists, infertility specialists, primary care doc kind of contributed to being a stress trigger that caused it to flare up, but it's something that I have dealt with ever since. So understanding that I did have 2 autoimmune disorders, my infertility specialist did take that in consideration and really had no other diagnosis of why we weren't getting pregnant. So she thought we would be very successful with doing IUIs. So we attempted to do a couple IUIs. They were unsuccessful. And after speaking with our infertility specialist further, we realized that we kind of had to really put our heads together about investing into infertility at a higher level because the IUIs were just not working for us. So we decided to go through and do IVF. We had our first egg retrieval on August 25th of 2016. We were very fortunate to get a lot of eggs. Out of those eggs, we had 6 embryos. They were all PGS tested for genetic testing and all came back positives as far as being healthy little embryos. So we found out that we had 3 boys and 3 girls, which was pretty awesome. And going through infertility, I realized that the success of embryos implanting, a lot of it is based on your embryo genetics. So a lot of miscarriages are actually due to some form of genetic disorder versus actually having some type of like failure with implanting into the uterus. So we were super excited to have 6 really successful embryos. So after our egg retrieval, we decided to do our first transfer on October 21st. We transferred 2 healthy embryos, and my infertility specialist gave us an 80% success rate, saying that most likely one, if not both, were going to stick. So we were super excited. I really wanted twins. I have twin sisters, so for us, it was going to be exciting. After your transfer, you typically will find out 9 days later. They do a blood test, and I had a really bad feeling that it didn't work. So on Halloween night of 2015, I took a pregnancy test at home, and unfortunately it was negative. But it also helped prepare me because the following day was my blood work, and I kind of already knew what the answer was going to be, and it was negative. So our first failed attempt had occurred. It was definitely emotional, but we were very excited that we still had 4 healthy embryos. So what are the chances that it would fail again? So we met with our doctor and decided to jump into another cycle right away. So on November 23rd of 2016, we did another embryo transfer with 2 more embryos, and we found out on December, I think it was like 4th or 5th, that those embryos did not take. So at that point, we were really devastated emotionally, financially, and just really frustrated because we really went in thinking we had an 80% chance. That's a pretty high chance of getting pregnant with at least 1 embryo during one of those transfers. My infertility specialist was shocked that both transfers failed. And so we decided to do a little bit more investigating. She kind of chalked it up to being more autoimmune related, saying that my uterus was basically fighting off the embryos. Unfortunately, due to other reasons, we decided to switch infertility specialists. I was very fortunate that I have a friend of a friend who is an infertility specialist in St. Louis, and she's awesome. So if you ever need an infertility specialist in St. Louis, I know an awesome person. She's fabulous, so please reach out to me. Sorry, my video cut off there. But I was saying, an infertility specialist in St. Louis, her name is Maureen Schulte, Dr. Maureen Schulte, and she is fabulous. So anyone living in St. Louis, please reach out to her. For those of you that live in Phoenix, Arizona, or are okay with traveling, I used Arizona Center for Fertility Specialist here in Arizona. I transferred to them in 2017. And I saw Dr. Namero, who is actually now retired, but he was an awesome, awesome physician. And his partner is actually still in practice, Dr. Lipskin. So I would highly recommend them. So shout out to my infertility specialist here in Phoenix. We decided after 2016 to take a little bit of a mental break, kind of gather our thoughts, figure out how we were going to pay for another cycle. Because if you guys don't know, infertility is actually extremely expensive and most often is not covered by insurance. So we decided to take some time off, meet with a new physician, and re-strategize what we were going to do moving forward. So after meeting with Dr. Namero at ACFS, we decided that it was going to be good to do another egg retrieval. Based on his criteria for labeling embryos and getting them tested genetically, as well as his protocol to do his egg retrieval, was different than our previous infertility specialist. So in September 15th, we decided of 2017 to do another egg retrieval. Again, we were fortunate and were very successful to get 30 plus eggs. 7 of them turned into embryos, which we had genetically tested, and only 1 of them came back with some form of chromosome abnormality. So again, we were fortunate to have 6 embryos. This time we had 4 boys and 2 girls. And so we were super excited at this point that we still had 8 healthy embryos in the freezer. So that gave us lots of opportunities to go through this whole process again. We decided to do our 3rd transfer on November 30th of 2017. We transferred 2 more embryos, which were our highest quality embryos. And we also did a different protocol than we had at our previous infertility specialist. In December, we found out that we had failed our 3rd embryo transfer. This was kind of my breaking point. I'm sorry, I'm going to get emotional. But this was truly the first time where I felt like I wasn't maybe going to be a mom, or at least be able to become pregnant. And that truly is what one of my passions was, to just truly go through an entire pregnancy. We were open to adoption, and actually that's part of our journey going forward. So in December of 2018, we found out that we had failed our third transfer. And again, my husband and I put our heads together and decided that we were going to go into potentially fostering or adopting. We went to our first foster adopt class, and I left thinking, like, I cannot foster a child. It would be just too hard for me emotionally on top of everything else. However, adoption was still on our radar. Being stubborn, I was very adamant that I still wanted to continue on our journey of trying to become pregnant on our own. So in January, I got my husband's blessing that in 2018 that we would be able to